Hey guys, Rami Malek here. So I'm outside the cinema. It's exactly 1 week before Easter Sunday. I'm about to head in for a decidedly more normal cinema experience when compared to the Minecraft madness of last week. So I'm about to head in to see The Amateur, which of course new spy film starring Rami Malek and Lawrence Fishburne. The trailer for this looked very good. Obviously you've seen it, the pool scene. So this does look like it should be a very entertaining spy flick. Satisfy that itch after the absolute excellence of Black Bag last month. I don't think this will be as good as that, but I am at least hoping to be entertained by it. So the only way to find out is to head in, get some snacks, and get seated for the amateur. So I've got my popcorn here and a Fanta, ready for some old school spy movie thrills with Rami Malek. So yeah, The Amateur. I'm back from seeing it. This is directed by James Hawes, who previously directed the film One Life, a Anthony Hopkins film about Nicholas Winton. Perhaps more relevant, though, is his experience directing episodes of Slow Horses, the Apple TV Plus spy series starring Gary Oldman. This is an adaptation of a book by Robert Littell, previously adapted to the screen in 1981, and Fox had been trying to get a new adaptation off the ground for years, until they eventually found their man in Rami Malek, who was very active in finally getting this off the ground. And so, yes, this looked to sort of fill that spy movie void, much like Black Bag last month, until the James Bond franchise finally makes its return. But does it actually deliver those old school spy movie thrills? Let's find out. So the film follows Charlie Heller, a fairly unassuming decoder who works for the CIA. He lives in a rural home with his wife Sarah, who's gone away on a business trip to London for a few days. Soon after, though, Charlie receives the devastating news that Sarah had been killed in an act of terror. However, frustrated by his superior's seeming lack of refusal to actually launch an investigation, Charlie decides to take matters into his own hands, using his technological expertise to track down his wife's killers as he launches a revenge mission of his own. So look, I think if you've seen at least one spy film, you'll probably be able to get the gist of how The Amateur goes down. There's no sort of radical reinvention of the genre here. This is no Black Bag. But, as formulaic as it is very, very reliably entertaining. Now, yes, its story is very predictable and actually kind of emotionally distant. Like, the sort of emotional beats don't land with the emotional impact that they should. But I think the film more than makes up for that with a very interesting look at this idea of what happens when someone who is not necessarily designed for killing decides to embark on a mission of revenge. And the film explores this thesis in very entertaining fashion with a good old-fashioned fast-paced globe-trotting adventure. Very much zips around between locations like London, Paris, Istanbul, Madrid. Very much staging this really entertaining game of cat and mouse where Charlie is very much simultaneously the cat and the mouse. Like, on the one hand, he's very much tracking down his wife's killers and, getting on top of them. But on the other hand, he's trying to stay a couple steps ahead of the CIA, who are tracking his every move. very much calling upon his technological expertise to get himself out of tight spots. It is very, very entertaining to watch, and the use of technology here is immensely satisfying. You know, you've got Charlie, you know, running facial scans and isolating vocals, you know, creating full 3D models and utilizing like deepfake technology and creating IEDs. You know, all of this stuff is incredibly, incredibly entertaining to watch. In fact, probably the best way I can describe it is imagine a James Bond movie where it's Q that gets to have all the fun, all the gadgets and gizmos. Yeah, if you keep that description in mind, it's probably not too far off the mark. Ironically, Rami Malek was, of course, also the villain in No Time to Die. So, yeah, it works both ways, I guess. So, to make up for its fairly predictable story, there is at least a satisfying flipping of roles. Less satisfying, however, is the hand to hand combat. It's not bad by any means, it's just too like quick cut to really have an impact, and this is definitely a result of the film's 12A certificate, you know, very much going for a less restrictive, you know, rating, you know, means, you know, you very much have to sort of cut around the violence. And this is far from the worst offender for it. Looking at you taking 3 with your fucking 15 cuts for Liam Neeson jumping a fence. But at the same time, that chasing that lower rating means that the impact of the violence is unfortunately minimized. But when the film's focusing on the battle of wits rather than hits, yeah, the film is very much on another level, and it helps that carrying out, you know, this sort of elaborate 4D chess game is a very capable Rami Malek as Charlie. You know, he does a great job with his sort of socially awkward, slightly nerdy mannerisms and behaviors. He does a great job with those eccentricities. You know, a sort of unconventional spy movie lead, but also does a good job with the sort of more, you know, emotional stuff as well. And yeah, very much, but still never losing sight of that nerdier character. It is very, very good. And of course, you know, all around Charlie's mission, you've got a very reliable cast. Notably, you got Rachel Brosnahan as his ill-fated wife, Sarah, and the sort of brief screen time she has, especially those early scenes. I like sitting in the cinema. I fully saw the vision James Gunn had when casting her as Lois Lane. I'm really looking forward to seeing what she does with that role in the summer. Fingers crossed she and Gunn deliver. You also have Katrina Balfe as like this mysterious agent that Charlie keeps in touch with on an encrypted chat. You also have Michael Stuhlbarg in a villain role, sort of leaving an impact in a fairly small role. John Bernthal really shines with his brief screen time as this agent known as the Bear. I'm very much looking forward though to seeing him get a sort of juicier role in The Accountant 2 in a couple of weeks. Been hearing a lot of good things about that. The standout of the film though is obviously goddamn Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah, he is really, really fucking good. You know, he's this real tough case, but also has this sort of like sweet little mentor student dynamic with Charlie as their sort of unique skill sets play off each other in very fun ways. When it's the two of them together on screen, yeah, the film is very much in its element. And obviously, yes, it's Charlie and his, you know, dynamics with all these that very much keeps the film engaging, very much keeps you invested in its stakes. Right through a final act, which offers up, in theory, an interesting exchange of morals, but the actual payoff that comes from that feels kind of underwhelming, a little bit anticlimactic. Like, there's this whole subplot of, potentially looking into this, this, like, corruption and abuse of power going on within the ranks of the CIA, but it kind of doesn't really do anything with it, and, like, the resolution it does get feels a little underwhelming, and that's a shame because everything to get to that point was a very entertaining watch. But it does at least have some payoff that will leave you satisfied coming out of the cinema. Overall, The Amateur may not offer up anything particularly new, but it more than makes up for that with some interesting rule subversions, an entertaining, fast-paced plot, and a very capable performance from Rami Malek. Out of 10, The Amateur gets a 7. So yeah, let me know down in the comments. Have you seen The Amateur? What do you think of it? Did you prefer this or Black Bag? And why is the answer Black Bag? And are you looking forward to, the return of the James Bond franchise, to finally fill that spy movie void? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new. And don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.